So my next question would be, lately I've seen some news about big artists like Taylor Swift, for example, pulling out their material, their tracks from streaming services like Spotify or iTunes. Why is that? For the little I know is because they said basically streaming is paid so little that it cuts into their sale. They actually the digital sale, I suppose, because nobody's selling CDs. Is that a thing?
So I mean that's the argument, right? Overall, from an industry standpoint, we looked at there's been a decline in overall sales, right? And although streaming is continuing to grow, the revenue for streaming is also growing. It's not really making up the difference of when we were at our peak from sales. So the argument is the streaming is an alternative or a substitute for some consumers. Streaming is basically creating a gap between what an artist potentially would have generated in sales versus what they're generating in streaming revenue. And that's why some artists are choosing to pull their stuff. But a lot of artists still come back onto the services anyway. What they do is they try to, instead of necessarily pull it from the service, they're just trying to delay the upload to the service. Okay. So it may, for example, they may release it on iTunes first before it's available on a streaming service, so that people can download it and pay for the album as opposed to just doing it for free. So that was the model. I mean, it has been done several times.
They were saying basically that streaming services are more beneficial for artists that have no label or they are like up and coming as a promotional tool, and also to make money, because that's probably going to be their only sale platform. They're probably not going to sell as many copies, but people are going to stream. Instead of for bigger artists, it's more like a promotional tool more than actually generating money, which they still can get from sales because they're big artists.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about the economics, right? So if I have 1 million people who's going to listen to my album, 20 years ago, 1 million people would have purchased 1 million albums.
Yeah.
Right. Versus 1 million people will stream the album 1 million times, right? 1 million streams times 0.0065 cents, it's not a lot of money.
That's the question. How many streams you have to make to add up to one sale?
It's different for every platform. So every platform is different, right? With YouTube being among the worst in terms of per play or per stream. And
isn't that funny, because YouTube is like the platform number one where people listen to music?
It is. I mean, it's argued that YouTube is certainly the biggest amount of consumption. You have billions of people on YouTube listening to music and watching videos of other content.
Do you know why the rates are so different from different?
Yeah, so the rates are different.
Services?
Yeah, the rates are different because YouTube is a audio visual hosting platform. Okay. Right, they're not a pure audio-only streaming platform. So they're licensed totally differently than like a Spotify or a Pandora. Spotify, YouTube, and Pandora, all are three options where a person can go listen to music, but they're all licensed totally differently, right? So Pandora, for example, Pandora pays royalties to Sound Exchange. Spotify does not. YouTube does not. Right?
So they pay directly to the artists? Or
well,
what?
Pandora is a digital radio service, so they have to pay digital radio royalties, but they're not a on-demand streaming services, so they do not pay mechanical royalties. Spotify is on-demand streaming services, so it has to pay mechanical royalties, but it doesn't have to pay Sound Exchange digital radio royalties. They have to because they're paying the master side royalties. YouTube is a user-generated content, upload hosting platform. So it falls under the DMCA, which is a Digital Millennium Copyright Act, in terms of the content is supposed to be owned by the user that uploads it. And if it's not, then they have a safe harbor spelled out in the DMCA, meaning we're not liable for copyright infringement That's the argument, right? They've been sued, of course, by labels and publishers and trade associations, and they've come out with Content ID as a way to identify content and to share ad revenue in the form of as a way to compensate. But they still fall under the DMCA safe harbor, so it's a really low amount that they're paying. They're paying, I think it's like 0.00004 or something.
Yeah,
it's really low. So they're licensed differently because they are a different type of use, and it really depends on the use and the copyrights involved. That determines the license type and the license fees. So they're released. Tidal is among the top in terms of average per stream rate that they pay out for revenue, and then Spotify and the Amazon and Google's are kind of in the middle. So that's and there's Deezer and Napster and other services as well. Napster is among the top as well. So and there's actually tons of other services out there as well that people can they have different regional popularity.
But you guys have any questions for
Oh, what do you think of the RIAA? They consider, I believe it's 1,500 streams equal one sale.
Right, I haven't checked it out in a while because it's changed.
So to go platinum, you have
it's
to
definitely changed since I owned the label. When I owned the label and I had a management company, I used to check on that stuff to make sure that but I haven't had to deal with it in a long time. So being certified gold, platinum, silver, gold, or platinum, like being certified used to be you had a certain number of sales.
Right.
It was just 10 million sales, so you're multi-platinum. 500,000 sales, so you're gold. Like that was, you knew what it was.
Right.
Then we had digital downloads. So then it was like, okay, well, we have digital downloads, those are sales, but we started allowing singles. So we came up with what was called album equivalent sales, right? The certain number of singles would total up to an album equivalent, right? So it's like, they had, they're gold by album equivalent standards, right? Not necessarily they bought 500,000 albums, but maybe there was 30 million singles. And they'll bundle it up and say that's album equivalent.
And you do get certified?
You can get certified.
Yeah.
And then that was with download. That was when iTunes came out because we had downloads. Then we had the introduction of streaming, right? Later on, the Spotify. So it's like, okay, now we need something different because album equivalent is not downloads. Now we have streams. So now we have to bundle up all these streams and figure out how many streams would be equivalent to an album. So that's what happened. So digital has changed the way how we certify consumption, right? How do we certify music consumption? But it also affects charts like Billboard. So the same thing has happened where it used to be, was it radio charting? Was it, okay, let's take into account social media now. There's a social chart, and then we're looking at, okay, well, let's take into account, streaming consumption. So there's, these things are all affecting how we perceive consumption. And I don't know, I'm not the expert in that particular field, so I don't know if we look back 20 years now in history and to this time and say did we get it right? Did we get it right? Does this number really make sense to be album equivalent? Right? Was that the true value? I don't know. There's people who know that better.
I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. But back before I worked in music and I just enjoyed music, let's take a band in the early '90s like Nirvana, and I bought that CD and let's pick one song off of that. Smells Like Teen Spirit. If 1,500 streams equals one sale, I never listened to Smell Like Teen Spirit 1,500 times. I never listened to it 300 times.
I agree.
But I definitely, whatever the equivalent is to buying it, I definitely did.
I agree.
Yeah, but you're looking at a broader scope now. In the fact that, 1,500, but you're talking 1,500, I guess, worldwide at that point?
Well, I haven't looked at the breakdown lately, so I don't know all the particulars, but the concept
more
is
than one Bob Horn out there listening to Smells Like Teen Spirit.
No,
Of course.
The thing is, at that time you're describing, you couldn't get the single. You had to buy the album to listen to the single.
Well, we've gone back to the single and less about the album.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's like what I'm saying is it's easier for people to listen to one single
Right.
and just that one maybe 1,000 billion times, but they will never buy.
Oh
the
yeah,
album.
especially now that you curate your own playlists.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you have these playlists with, people have 100 tracks on their playlist, and so
Yeah.
300 tracks on a playlist.
And they publish it on Spotify.
You're sampling from all these different albums and
Yeah.
to create your own music experience.
Exactly.
Right. So you're listening over and over and over and over again one single from someone's album and one single from someone else's album and so forth.
That's also why YouTube, like for my channel, for any other channel, the way YouTube ranks channels, music artists are taken out of the equation because they have so many views just because people listen to the same song a
Right.
billion times.
They create their
That-
playlists.
Yeah, no other channel that is not a music artist will get near where the artist channels are, because people just don't look, at this
Right.
conversation on YouTube 1,000 billion times over and over and over, like they listen to
Right.
a Beyonce song.
It's almost like if each listener was more responsible for what they clicked on.
Yeah,
So the first time I stream a song is equivalent to a sale. And then every other time I stream it, it's either
yeah,
I own it now and
Yeah.
that stream number doesn't go up.
yeah, basically.
But I'm connected to my Spotify and it's recorded that I streamed it at least once, which in the old days I would have had to buy it to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one stream, that first stream, could be considered a
a
sale.
sale, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think
Except you're not paying for it unless you're
what-
buying Spotify Premium and
Right.
I think what's also interesting is that we could look at, and this is a whole, I think, exercise that someone could do, but we can look at how streaming impacts your
Live
set
show.
list for live shows,
yeah.
right? Because people are starting to choose what they're going to perform based on the consumption. Before, you just assume that everyone loved every track on your album because you had no
Right.
way of knowing that they played, only the first 3 tracks every time and just didn't care about the rest of it, right? So every concert, every tour, we play the full album from start to finish because you just assume they loved it all. You have no feedback loop.
Sure.
Now you have a direct feedback loop. Here's the whole album, like, oh crap, this one played 1,000 times, this one played 200,000 times, right? So that one song is going to be on the tour, right? This one's not.
Right.
Who that impacts though now are songwriters, right? Because once again, album can sell 1 million copies. Every songwriter on the album gets paid the exact same because there's no way of differentiating
Right.
that this was the most popular song and these fillers are not. Now it's like, okay, we're getting paid by track. So if I'm on the album and my track that I co-wrote was only paid 1,000 times and this one got uplifted to a playlist, then now a co-writer who we have both appear on the same album is going to get way more money than me because that track is going to get played exponentially more than my track.
That's a good thing. It's a meritocratic.
It's a more fair
Yeah.
way, but it definitely impacts songwriters, right? Because now you really have to just write hits.
Yeah.
You can't
Right.
write filler albums, album fillers, and and there's a lot of politics in that. Like you don't always get to write
yeah.
the single, or
Definitely.
to co-produce or any of that. So, which means I would argue then you should probably get more money up front to participate because now it's not like, 2 singles could drive an album to multi-platinum
Oh, yeah.
20 years ago. 2 singles, right? So everyone on that album is going to eat off of the efforts of the producers and the writers of those 2
two.
singles. Everyone else is going to also buy homes and cars off the efforts of those 2 singles. Now it's like those 2 singles are still doing great, and yours are not, and you're not going to eat. You're not
You get
going to
ramen.
buy.
Are albums going to disappear? Question for all of you.
Well, it used to be you did an album and then went and toured to support the album. Now you do the tour and do the album to support the tour, as opposed to So
Well, a lot of
albums-
people, the album's already disappeared.
Yeah,
Well, the album, people are buying albums, I guess fewer and fewer people are buying albums, is what I'm trying to say. Fewer and fewer people are actually buying albums in general. So let's start with that, right? When CD sales are constant decline, vinyl is actually picking up only as a kind of nostalgic,
Yeah, but it's a
history
small
thing.
niche.
It's still small. And it's not actually played every day. It's something like when people come over and like you have a record player and like, oh,
Right.
I'm cool,
Yeah.
so otherwise it just sits there on the shelf. And then digital albums. I mean, iTunes, reportedly is going to shut down eventually. So that's the biggest source of digital albums for much of the music industry is iTunes. Yeah. So that shuts down. That pretty much there goes digital albums. CD is on its own decline, and vinyl is right now is just a novelty. So the answer, I guess, would be yes. I mean, albums are holding on by the skin of their teeth because of iTunes right now.
Yeah, even music ownership seems like it will go away.
Ownership, yeah. I mean,
like everything else.
Do you have a CD player in your car? I don't have a CD player in my house. I don't have. I have
one in my car, but
my laptop doesn't even have a CD input.
Yeah,
any kind of CD-ROM, DVD, CD, nothing can be input into my laptop. So
they're probably gonna be another piece of vintage tech like VHS.
Well, if you look at the history of music and recorded music, it started off with the singles, because vinyl formats, especially back then, could only hold X amount of information. We worked our way into formats that allowed us to put enough minutes of music on a medium that gave us an album.
Right.
And we pushed the album for a long time. But what drove a lot of things, especially in the 50s and 60s, was the 45, the single.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of going back to, we've gone full circle. And they'll get to a point where we'll go full circle again and we'll go back to albums. I don't think it's going to go away completely. Well, I think artists just need to give people a reason to buy an album.
Yeah, that's a big point.
I mean, are you going to buy Dark Side of the...
I feel is the problem that people is so ingrained, artists and producers, in trying to get a hit fast, even if it doesn't last more than 2 months, and then crank out the next one. And that cannot be done with albums, even just for technical reasons, recording and mixing and get it done and promote it. So they rather try that route. So the quick and easy instant gratification of one single, one hit, next one.
Okay. Well, I mean, just attention span.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That. I mean, we used to wait in line outside Tower Records. To go in and get an album, to physically own something, and if you didn't get to buy it, you were upset. Like the ownership is gone. The idea
it was good to have your. But I still have my booklets and stuff. I still have a lot of CDs. But I always told myself I was going to transfer the CDs onto my computer. Back when I actually had a CD-ROM on my computer. Now I don't have a CD-ROM, so I have CDs in my house that I can't even use. They're all stored there in boxes, but. You'd be able to flip through the book, and you'd be like, play this CD, and you're getting your friend's car in high school, and you flip through their book because it's under the seat, and pick out what you want. Like, that was actually fun.
Right.
But
it's also for concert. Actually, Nine Inch Nails played here in LA last week, and Trent Reznor said, don't buy tickets online because they're super expensive. Let's do it the old way. Wait in line.
Yeah.
And you got it for like $10 or something.
Another band did that.
Because he was like fighting against this type of...
but also that worked because who are his fans?
Right.
They're not 14-year-olds.
No.
Right. It was another band that did the same thing. They had a concert and you could only buy the ticket at the box office, period.
Right.
But again, they had to be a big enough band they have a big enough fan base to do that.
It's good that some big artists are doing that, I guess.
But again, I think it's
they have the
novelty.
fan base to support it.
Yeah, it's the live music. I mean, it's the ticketing version of vinyl. It's a novelty, right? It's like, okay, yes, of course, people are going to stand in line for Nine Inch Nails, or they're going to stand in line. If the Stones that they're going to tour, you can only buy it at the box office.
And just to jump on another subject, the biggest advice, the best advice you can give to like upcoming producers. If you take a look at what we said before, the fees up front, or like trying to be somewhat a talent scout and find an artist that you believe in, which one would you...
Well, okay, so there's a couple things there. I'd say my biggest advice would be to learn the business side, go to these websites, download the work for hire forms, have them ready to go, download a split sheet, and have those. There's so many guys that they just want to be cool with everybody on the session, and they don't want to have these awkward business conversations.
But you have to
get used to having them.
Yeah.
Because when something pops off, you'll be covered. So that's the best advice I can give is when you work with an artist, talk through the plan, talk through the money, if there will ever be some, know who's gonna have what, so you don't have arguments later, and have to involve lawyers later and all that kind of stuff to fight it. You know, that's the advice. The other question about finding an artist, I mean, you're talking about the hardest thing to do in the music business is break an artist.
Yeah.
So you collaborating with an artist you just found because you thought they were a good singer, that you're embarking on the hardest task. You know, like getting a record deal that's kind of one of them.
Yeah.
Breaking a new artist is the other one, and that's the bigger one. That's, you know, breaking them into fame. It's like in 20 years, this is my 20th year, I've seen 5 people go from 0 to super famous. Neo, NDRE, Akon, a few others. And I've worked with thousands of people.
Yeah.
You know? So it's a very... That shouldn't be the goal. Unless you find that diamond artist.
That's the exception, not the rule.
They have that... Exactly. They have that it factor, and you know it. But you also got to be experienced enough to know if they are that person. Some people look at... You know, young producers probably think their friend down the street that sings
it's cool.
is
Everything
amazing,
is cool because
and they're gonna be
the
famous.
first
It's
thing
like,
they hear.
Don't worry about that. I mean, worry about... I mean, in all the music business, the song is king.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're selling.
We have to repeat
So,
that. I mean,
work
a
on-
million times.
Work on stuff that people want to listen to. You know, strive for... You find an artist, try to get the best song possible. You know, don't be afraid to collaborate with people. Don't be afraid to use your publishing as leverage. People hold on to publishing points so severely, and 100% of nothing is $0.
Exactly.
You know, like we just did a music video for our artist and gave 3% publishing as well as some other return on investment to an investor to pay for the music video.
Of course.
You know, 3%. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like those are tools. You know, you can't afford to hire a string section, but you hire a string arranger and give him part of the publishing. But artists that have no success will be like, I need to keep 100% of my publishing. I can't do that.
It's
You
gonna be
know?
$100 anyway. So
Right.
Yeah.
So they'd rather
Collaborate.
save up $1,000 to hire the string arranger
course.
rather than just give him 5% publishing and $200.
of course.
You know, so song is king. Good songs, stuff that people want to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, and just realize that it's the hardest business, I think.
And it's also a risk anyway, you know. Because
Yeah,
sometimes you
biggest
put
risk.
down the work and you got nothing and you try again.
I don't know if I think it was you earlier mentioned how many songs never come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say it's probably as just mixer, that one thing that I do, probably 80% of what I mix
Really?
doesn't come out.
That much?
Absolutely. Because like I said earlier off camera, putting your song on SoundCloud is not releasing your song.
No, it's not.
That's nothing.
It's
you
not.
know? So as far as stuff coming out, it's like that's the biggest thing I see as a mixer is people focus so much of the studio aspect and the recording, and they get that song done, and then it's just a dead stop. What do I do now? I have no idea
They
what
play
to
in
do.
the garage.
They're not educated. They don't have a plan. You know, it's like they just put it up on YouTube. They might use one of these services to get it to Spotify, but then it's like you check it 3 months later and it has 200 listens.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because you weren't prepared and you didn't.
You
go.
mentioned investors. Who invests in this people?
I mean, that
in
could be
this
anyone
product.
from a family member to, you know, an investment firm to, you know, like. So back to this music video I did, we had 3 investors. One was us. One was a family member of the artist that just said, hey, I want to pitch in and help. And we actually did paperwork with her and
course.
return of an investment, you know, all that stuff. Like, it's legit, you know?
Yeah.
And then the third one was a high-end investor that's just kind of an old colleague and wanted to be part of it.
Okay, so it's like either investor firms or people in the industry?
Well, first of all, investing in music is it's the hardest and
Yeah.
worst investment unless you have that golden goose.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course, you want to be in.
And again, you don't know that you have that until it breaks. So as an investor, it's usually a poor investment. So you got to go through so much you have to really show them how they're going to get their money back. That's the investing is all about the return of an investment. How am I getting the investment back? So when I've been involved in someone investing in music, I like to do two-sided investment, and it's kind of like what we're talking about with production fees. You have back end and front end. A lot of it, people just want to have investors. Hey, here's 20 grand.
Yeah.
And if we go famous, you'll get your 20 grand back plus more, or we'll double it. And I like to do twofold. It's like, okay, we're going to give you cash back in 2 months, and that's on paper. That's guaranteed. Blah blah blah. And then you also have your back end, which will be way bigger.
Okay.
So that's your incentive is the back end. And
So how much money the product will make?
right. I've also seen people do stuff like they have deals in the works for a publishing deal, and they're going to be getting an advance, and they already know the number of that advance, paperwork's in motion, and they will ask somebody to front money in advance on that advance.
Yeah.
So that advance is coming, but I need $5 grand right now. I'll give you
Of course.
10 grand back from this advance
Yeah,
or something like that.
But
There's platforms for that too. Like Lyric Financial and Royalty Exchange, they're platforms where and what's the other one? Sound Royalties. Those three platforms and Vest I mentioned earlier, they're helping a lot of creators do these type of deals with strangers. Where it's like, hey, I have some either have full copyright ownership or even just a piece. Even if you're just a producer and you have 2 points on a record, you can sell that on those platforms.
What are the sites again?
So Vest, VEZT, Sound Royalties, Royalty Exchange, and Lyric Financial.
Okay.
Those are all different companies.
But what I would be asking if I was an investor is, okay, you're gonna give me my 20 grand back cash, and then the back end is not guaranteed.
Well, nothing's
Right,
guaranteed
of
as an
course.
investment.
Okay.
You play the stock market, it's not a guarantee either.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I just
But
wanted
the thing is, if you're an artist or a producer developing an artist and you're looking for an investment, you want to have your homework done so well that you can convince the investor that they have a real shot.
Yeah. So
You know?
there's a risk, but there's also
You want to
a good
minimize the risk.
possibility that it's gonna go well.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So like the twofold return on investment strategies I just dealt with for my artist, there's an absolute cash payback.
So you're not gonna lose money,
You're gonna
you
get
investor.
And
so it's a loan.
Yeah.
it's a loan, basically.
It's a loan.
And then
It's
there's
a
the risk part.
It's a
which
Mr.
is-
Wonderful from
That's-
Shark Tank deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a loan plus a royalty. He loves those deals.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's a smart way to do it, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
just because.
Well, investor would be more excited about that deal because it's showing that you have confidence in what you're working on, and you're putting, you're putting your money where your mouth is.
Right.
So
But
And
don't,
also not taking too much. Like don't just be like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
producing this album with my friend and we need 20 grand.
yeah,
right.
It's like that's ridiculous.
yeah.
It's
of
like
course.
what's your strategy? What's your plan? Who else are you
That's
working
because it
with?
grows on trees, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so Dai, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
being here. Our time with you is over. You got stuff to do, and I really appreciate for you to be here. The information you gave us was priceless, and I hope to have you on the show back again.
Absolutely. Thank you
Good to see
guys.
you, man.
Thanks,
Thanks. Appreciate it. And you can reach out to me on Tune Registry. Just go to tuneregistry.com and check out what we're doing.
All right, and we'll be in touch.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.